What is up, Waffle Gang? I do hope you are well. My name is Mark, and today we're checking out some r/entitled people. If you are new here, please consider hitting that like, that subscribe, and maybe that notification bell too, as it all really helps out our channel. It truly does. And just a huge thank you for spending 20 minutes or so out of your day to be here. It does mean the absolute world to me, and you already know that, but I'm going to tell you again, it does mean the world to me, and you're bloody legends for doing what you do. Now let's crack on with today's stories. Now, our first story comes from Vodka for the Motherland. I am entitled to your driveway. Oh, here we go. I live across from a school. Normally I park my car on the road as there is no room on our drive. So when the school run comes, our drive is full. However, my car recently had to go into the shop, but I still needed to drive to the shops. We live in a very rural small town, making it hard to get around. So I had borrowed my mum's car that would normally be on the drive. Going out and buying my shopping. I doubted I would struggle to park since it would be on my drive, so I didn't kill time and just drove straight home. As expected, I arrived at the school rush, and to my utter shock, as I approached my drive, a woman in some crappy Kia SUV parks on my drive. Parking my car so it blocks her in the drive, I go to confront her. Here's the exchange. Key, EM, entitled Mum, me. I knock on her window so she rolls it down. EM says, "What?" I said, "You've parked on my drive, can you please move?" To which she responds, "Why?" "Well, I need to park on my driveway." EM then responds, "Well, I have to collect my children and there is nowhere to park." I say, "Regardless, that gives you no right to park on my drive." Entitled Mum says, "I have children to collect so I can park how I want." She then proceeds to get out the car and walk to the school. Sitting back in my car, I wait for her to come back. When she comes back, she puts the kids in her car and starts it, expecting me to move. She just drives forward until there is only a foot between our cars. She then sits for a solid minute beeping. After realising that wouldn't work, she got out and opened my car door, without knocking or anything, demanding I move my car. Here's the exchange. EM says, "Move your car now." I said, "No, I'm sorry, I can't." "Why not?" "You parked on my drive and I expect an apology." To which she responds, "No you don't, you weren't in, so I was entitled to your driveway." Me, fucking gobsmacked with her cheek at this point. "You can walk home if you like, but you have parked on my property without my permission, and then when asked to move, did not. Either apologise or I'm gonna sit here for an hour." To my effing shock, she got in the car and waited. She would rather effing wait than apologise. I would have laughed if I wasn't so shocked someone could be this arrogant. Needless to say, her kids got bored because 15 minutes later, EM says, "My kids are bored, move your car." "Apologise, your children are not my problem." She says, "Move your effing car." I said, "I will if you apologise." After a back and forth repeating like this, she got back in the car and got on the phone. I thought perhaps she was phoning the cops or something. That got me a bit worried, but I held my ground. Next thing I know, another car pulls behind my car and out comes her husband, ED entitled Dad. He shouts, "Move your car now." I said, "Your wife parked on my drive and I demand an apology." He says, "If you don't move your car, I will drag you out and effing move it myself." At this point, I don't want to risk it. I'm a small light woman on my own, so I move my car and she leaves. I just can't believe someone can be that entitled. I will admit, I was a bit of a dick, but this isn't the first time we had issues with school mums being entitled. We have a very similar issue where I live. Just down the road from me is a school. People just park absolute anywhere. They're animals. I see them parking in people's driveways, just literally just driving in their driveways, getting out and going to the school. And I think, what are you doing? Luckily, the school is down the road from me, but the cul-de-sac next to the school, that is always rammed with cars at school closing time. And, you know, they're just all over the place, up on the curbs in front of people's houses, on their driveway. I've only had one incident where someone parked on my driveway and it was an estate agent showing the house across the road, told the people to come park on our driveway, and the estate agent guy did. And I just parked because I was just coming back, so I just parked behind his car and went in the house. And I went there for ages and I saw him just standing there with his hands up looking around like that Pulp Fiction meme. And he was looking, and it was obvious it was my house that he was parked in front of because the drive's right there in front of it. And eventually he had to knock on the door and said, "Oh, is this your drive?" And it was sort of like, "Yeah, you know it's my drive." He said, "I'm really sorry about that." And it was like, "Oh, okay then, fair enough." But it would have been like, if you would have asked first, it wouldn't have been a problem, you know. But when you just think that you can just park there, then it becomes an issue. And I've mentioned my brother before, and he has the very same issue because he lives in central Oxford, and people that hate the parking around there because it costs like £10 an hour or something like that to park in the centre of Oxford. And so he generally gets people parking in front of his garage. But yeah, my brother takes no prisoners. He literally chains it up to his car and he drags it in the middle of the road and leaves it there. He doesn't mess about. But anyway, I've waffled on again. Let's move on to the next one. Now, I found a different thread that's based around entitled people as well, with a whole bunch of stories, much like the Nightmare Neighbours one. So I'm going to go through some of them. And we start with Per Prin Thom saying, my ex, he grew up middle class but was convinced that he had a poor childhood because his parents weren't able to indulge his every whim. Seriously, he thought that because he didn't get every single thing he asked for as a kid, that he was poor. Because of this, he believed that the universe owed him. He didn't try in school or work and then would get angry when he did badly because it wasn't fair. He would get angry at his friends who got better jobs than him because they were better qualified and better at their jobs, and demand that they quit so he could have them because he deserved them more. He got angry at me for any awards or scholarships I received for my hard work because it wasn't fair, despite us being in completely different programs at different schools and therefore not even competition for each other. He had a work placement as part of his program, spent the majority of the time playing video games on his phone, and ended up costing the company $10,000 because he okayed an incredibly defective product without actually checking it because he wanted to get back to his game. He couldn't understand how this was his fault, was absolutely devastated when his boss yelled at him and tried to ensure he didn't get credit for it, and was even more upset when they wouldn't give him a positive reference letter. My dad has a nice sports car. He bought it as a young adult in pretty bad condition, fixed it up, and now it counts as a classic or whatever. My ex believed that he was going to inherit that car when my dad died. Not me, not my brother, him. I don't think he and my dad ever had a conversation. Seriously, I could go on for ages. I have 1,000 more examples, but he constantly went on and on about how the world owed him things and how nothing ever went his way and how unfair everything was because he perceived his childhood as less than perfect. And Withira says my ex-roommate was the most entitled, selfish person I've ever met in my life. She had a small Yorkie and did not take care of the poor thing. I was the one that fed the dog most of the time, and she didn't take it outside, so you can safely assume what the dog did in response. But she just didn't care. Seemed like it was more of a thing to take selfies with than actually care about. She did not pay for her own rent, her parents did. She racked up $10,000 on her mum's credit card by shopping basically every day and taking Ubers everywhere. She started seeing guys on Tinder every night, even ones she didn't like, just to be taken out to dinner for free. Then with Tinder, she met a professional athlete who shall remain nameless, but was super into coke, which is a lot of them. She got into it. And from then on, my life was this girl having parties every single night, leaving messes everywhere and giving out our key to random dudes. She also didn't pay the bills, so I had to either pay the entire thing or heat/electric internet would go out. When I confronted her about anything, she was super passive aggressive and basically stated that because I didn't go out partying or live the lifestyle that she did made me unpopular and just upset that my life wasn't like that. When she was yelling at 4:30 AM, I politely asked her to stop. She would yell at me from her room and start talking about me with her club friends. Basically, she didn't really care about anyone but herself, her appearance, and her lifestyle. And Crazy Nekusama says, I work in customer service, so I see entitled idiots all the time. A good, more recent one was when this woman came to return something. She butted ahead of the other person waiting in line, threw her stuff on the counter, and was demanding someone help her in that instant. Everyone was wrapped up with customers, as is, so we couldn't. She complained to my manager about how she had to wait, and didn't we know she was a regular customer, and by not helping her that instant, we were preventing her from shopping and spending money here, which was what kept us employed. I love when people act like utter idiots and then try to justify their behaviour. At least my co-workers and I have a good laugh when they are gone. And Mock Womble says previous employer had to make redundancies. Rather than go for the good old last in first out strategy, to their credit they employed a point system which credited people for low sick rate, people with genuine disabilities etc. were exempt, no disciplinary record, basically generally made sure people who deserved their job kept it. Out of the 11 people who went, the worst by a very long margin was a youngish woman who seemed to treat turning up to work as an optional exercise. She had the worst sickness record I've ever seen, mostly involving Mondays and Fridays, and multiple disciplinaries. Mostly for sickness, but a few more for malicious gossiping and refusal to work in certain areas. No, I don't know how she hadn't already been sacked either. Anyway, she appealed her redundancy to the bitter end. I sat in on her final appeal meeting, and she was vile. She brought a list of her colleagues, who in her view should have been made redundant instead of her, and actively campaigned for that to happen. One of the people on her list was a woman who she'd been bridesmaid to the previous summer. Her rationale that she was trying for a baby and would be going on maternity leave, so we might as well get rid of her. She was supposed to be her best friend. After the meeting, I walked to the reception door with her in one of the most uncomfortable silences I've ever experienced. But before she left, she looked me directly in the eye and told me that if we didn't reinstate her, she'd accuse one of the senior managers of touching her up, and said that everyone would believe her because she's pretty and blonde, and he's a complete word I can't bring myself to say for some reason. While my jaw was still hanging, she told me that I should look for another job because the only people who ever get promoted in that company have a set of bollocks between their legs. She presumably hadn't noticed that out of the 6 people on the senior management team, 4 are female and have all been promoted from other positions. I don't think I've ever encountered another human being with a bigger disconnect between their reality and the truth. For the record, she already had another job. She just wanted to reinstate her so she could tell the GM to F off to his face. Her words, not mine. And Da says, a few years ago, we had a huge ice storm where I live. Pretty much the whole city was without power for several days. My parents, who live in the rural area outside the city, were without power for 2 weeks, tons of damage, etc. I was lucky enough to get power after 3 days, as was most of the city. 2 days in, one of my friends posted on Facebook that he was furious with the power company for not having the power back yet because he's a paying customer and he was entitled to power. Like, really? Nobody had power, and the power companies were working as hard as they could to restore power to everyone. Completely lost respect for him that day. With companies, well, any company really, I never understand why they have social media presence for the majority of the time, especially like on Twitter or Facebook. If you go to any company and you go on their Twitter or Facebook, the majority of the time is always going to be complaints. It's the best way to get your argument across to them because their social media just panics. And if I was a big company, I know it sounds really bad, there's definitely no way I'd be on social media. It's just depressing. And Agaby says, one of my roommates is a piece of work. She doesn't buy any food and just waits around until I make something. Sometimes she even turns her nose up at stuff I offer that is perfectly fine. She has her own bathroom that would be straight up nasty if I didn't clean it. She's lazy, doesn't help with housework, and mostly just lays around. You could leave a jacket or a book out and she doesn't care, just tosses it on the floor or sits on it. On top of it all, she's kind of a mean girl attitude all the time, very better than you. I mean, she's an adorable cat, but her entitlement is off the charts. A deleted user says, one of my friends who lives way beyond her means. 1. When she graduated college, she moved in with a relative who was married and had kids until they got tired of her mooching off them and asked her to move out. She lost her shit and got her mum to fight her battle, and now they're pretty much estranged from that side of the family. 2. She then moved in with her parents and still lives with them, while constantly complaining about how humiliating it is to still have to live at home. But apparently it's not humiliating for a 25-year-old to hit her parents up for cash and a new car, even though she has no bills at all, because she's living with them. 3. She refused to even consider applying to entry-level jobs related to her major because I already have experience in doing that work from school. I deserve a better position. Well, 3 years later, and she still doesn't have a full-time job, or one remotely related to her major. 4. If she wants to go to an event or wants food and drinks but doesn't have the money because she spent her paycheck, the instant she got it, she'd trap friends into paying for her tickets into those events and nag them into buying food for her. I fell into that trap once. She still owes me $50. I don't anticipate ever getting it back. And also this guy who was in the same major as me would also brag about how rich his family was in his home country. We had maids for everything. I had one to dress me in the morning, and if I was hungry, I'd send another maid to buy me snacks. Ugh. And Iron Tits McGinty says, great name, my ex was adopted by his grandparents at a young age and raised in a multi-million-dollar home in a gated city. His whole life, everything was done for him. Cleaning, cooking, he didn't even know how to turn on a washing machine. So after 3 years of dating, we moved into a house he purchased cash, and he had nothing to contribute. I bought stuff from my studio, but it wasn't much, and he hated all of it because it wasn't antique, and the house was built in 1888. So I bought antique furnishings. Here's where it gets weird. He has so little idea how to take care of himself. He makes me pack him lunches. I have to buy food because he bought the house and we figured it was fair. and he was insisting I was buying the wrong juice boxes and shit. He made me do all the laundry, he made me clean his 5-bedroom farmhouse, and I was working 2 jobs while he worked 1. He then complained that I wasn't visiting him at work like I used to, when I had 1 job. And then when I was never around anymore, because I had to pay for my car and all of our utilities and groceries and shit, he said I should make time and not be tired. So I pointed out that having fibromyalgia meant rest and recovery time is critically important to me. He said I always have to be the victim. He broke up with me for a woman who was a part-time TA and apparently got super dependent on her too. But here's the beautiful thing. He was so naive, he had no idea how much things cost, so I told him if he wanted to keep what I purchased for the house, it would cost him $6,000. He wrote me a check. I paid about $3,500 for everything I put in that house. At least you got a little something out of it, right? Jesus, imagine dealing with someone like that. And Whimsy UU says, I went to an expensive private university. Someone started one of those confession Facebook pages where students could submit a post and have it posted anonymously. Now surprisingly, this particular person was in the comments so everyone could see her name. She had no shame. The original post had something to do with rich students acting entitled. Now if she had responded with something like, my parents worked hard for that money and I'm just lucky that I was born to them. Fine, simplistic and ignorant of the whole picture, sure, yeah, but not entirely wrong. However, what she actually did was go on and on about how she deserves all the money, and the yacht, and other things. She was completely ignoring the fact that she was talking about her parents' money, and she said this clearly, she wasn't some rich entrepreneur's college kid. She even argued with people who pointed this out. She hadn't done a damn thing in her life to deserve that money. And Cyclone Cowgirl says, a friend from my junior/senior years of high school. He was a great friend, he really was. He was always there for me and always super thoughtful. I adored him, but I wasn't attracted to him romantically. And when he made a move, I politely declined and explained that I wasn't into him like that. He said cool, that's fine, and went back to normal. Or so I thought. My freshman year of college, I met a guy and began dating him. My friend, my only close friend at school at the time, decided to humiliate me in front of his friends, called me a whore who only wanted douchebags, and then proceeded to make sure that I had a reputation with his circles and couldn't make friends easily that entire year. I didn't realise that our friendship was based only on my potential sexual availability, because he had been so nice, but he thought he was entitled to my vagina. Silly me. Other than my boyfriend, I had the loneliest year of my life and left the school the next year because my depression became overwhelming. Good times. God, that's horrible to hear, isn't it? Bloody hell. Another one from a deleted user says, my husband's work had a Christmas party for the employees' children. They paid for the party out of their own funds and with donations from local businesses. There were some simple activities like a few bounce houses, an obstacle course for the older ones, and craft kind of things. Santa was also there and gave each child a small age-appropriate gift. I was standing in line with my 2-year-old son for one of the activities when I overheard a woman behind me start loudly complaining about the gift. They were bigger last year and this year is so flimsy, and on for a few minutes. These people were not required to do jack for their employees' children, but they did, and she couldn't take 1 second to be grateful her child got anything at all. It made me so angry that I made sure I wrote a thank you letter to the people who organised the event. And Mama D Cook says, sadly my mother. Last year, while my husband and I were Christmas shopping for our daughter with our last $25, a man came up to us and handed us a $75 gift card and said Merry Christmas. This is so you can give your girl a good Christmas. We were in shock. My mother asked for his number and asked if he could help her. My husband and I both struggle with many health conditions. He's disabled so he doesn't work, and we're trying to keep our house out of foreclosure. My mother, on the other hand, lives in a comfortable house in the suburbs with my father. Together, they make well over 6 figures and want for nothing. Then this year at Christmas time, my church handed everyone an envelope with money in it and told us if we need it, to use it. But if we felt we're in a position to pass it on and to give it to someone in the community, my mother told me I should give it to her. I used to see her with rose-coloured glasses on, but I'm starting to see her true colours, and I don't know how this woman and I are related at all. Quick pre-warning on this one, this story involves someone mentioning abortion and wishing harm on a little one and all that kind of stuff, so just a pre-warning on there if you want to skip it. And Professor Lexus says, a former friend and roommate of mine, no contest, not even my spoiled golden child younger siblings hold a candle to him. To be brief, his parents moved to another state, gave him open access to any money he needed for bills and student loans, so as long as he played landlord for their old house, renting it out to his friends. He spent their money quite lavishly with zero guilt. Everything they have will be mine when they die anyways, is my inheritance, I might as well spend it now. The absolute worst I heard from him was when his sister, a really sweet person, was going through a difficult labour with her first child. The baby wasn't doing well and needed a lot of intensive care to survive its first few days. He's fine and healthy now. During that time, my former roommate was constantly moody and would go into angry tirades, screaming that he wished it would just die already because his parents were footing the medical bills and the little bastard was going to bleed him dry. She should have had an abortion, she had no business getting pregnant anyways. But weeks later, after getting to see his healthy nephew, he was gushing about how wonderful it was to be an uncle. He wasn't too happy to be reminded by me about all the terrible garbage he had just said a few days prior. And Rockefeller Records says probably my brother. Growing up sucked a lot of times. My mum wouldn't come home from the casino and my brother always took the money she left for us to go out with friends. Nothing to eat until someone came home around 9 PM. This was from 4 to 7. We got evicted afterwards and my brother sold our SNES and games while moving into a little studio apartment because I needed to learn how to stop being spoiled and learn what a sacrifice is. We later learned that money was used for him to buy weed. He was around 14. You begin getting a little gist of what kind of person this is, but the worst offence was when my best friend's brother got me a laptop for Christmas 5 years ago. I lent it to my brother since he had nothing to use to look for a job, but since I've been so spoiled throughout my life, I deserve to have it taken away and smashed to bits. I was 23 fucking years old and living between homes because I was so busy taking care of my mum. Sorry for the spotty narrative. Honestly, this kid just caused so much more hell than help throughout my life. I wish my parents got an abortion in the 90s so I wouldn't have to pick up after my older brother. Wow. Now, what do you guys think of this one, and what do you guys think of the entitled parent stories? Do you have one of your own? Let us know in the comments below. Now, once again, guys, thank you for being here today. I hope you did enjoy these stories. I went off a little bit there. I went from full stories to another thread. I get wrapped up in these threads. I start reading them and I can't stop. I hope you do enjoy the style of it all, and let me know if you do or if you don't. And we can adjust from there, really. Thank you so much for your love, support, and time, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Much love.